Welcome to One Take, and if you're mainly here for Raised by Wolves coverage, welcome back to One Take. The trailer for Season 2 is out, which means it's time to comb through it and see what we can learn. The creator of the show, Aaron Guzikowski, confirmed that mother and father did indeed land in the tropical zone in the finale of Season 1, and the trailer opens with a few shots of this new locale, with a line from mother saying,
"Androids can change, just like human beings."
In Season 1, we saw her struggling with emotions and becoming more human. Not surprisingly, that theme appears to continue here. This shot of father begs a few questions. The people behind him are the Mithraic that recently abandoned Marcus. If you need a reminder, Lucius discovered Marcus as an imposter, then force-fed him one of Mother's eyes and left him behind. So unless father has been hacked again, which could feel a little repetitive, why would he be leading Mithraic anywhere? Well, take note of the straps across each of their chests. I think that's a clue which we'll come back to a little later in the trailer when we see them again more clearly. Father is also holding some kind of shock weapon, which will also come up again later. We see Marcus for a moment, and we've got to wonder what ingesting dark photon energy, or whatever's in those eyes, does to him, especially considering how unhinged he already was toward the end of Season 1. Here, Mother carries what looks like a high-tech harpoon, and she seems to be on the hunt. I don't know about you, but when I see a big harpoon, I think of fighting a large animal. Perhaps here we're seeing a glimpse of Mother ensuring that her baby, the giant snake, doesn't harm Campion or any of her other children. This is an interesting shot here because it may tie into an Easter egg on the official Raised by Wolves site. Last year, they made an interactive page where you can explore Kepler 22b and discover various items. If you find all 30, you unlock an Easter egg, which is a close-up image of a ship called the Tarantula, which bears some resemblance to this ship in the trailer. So what do we know about this ship? Not much. The website says it's a large ship capable of transporting redacted, approach with caution, energy signature unknown, inhabitants currently unidentified. Later in the trailer, there's this shot which looks like a close-up of one of these vehicles that disembark from the Tarantula. It's hard to make out from this distance, but I think this is the actor James Harkness, who plays a new atheist character named Tamerlane. And this may be Kim Engelbrecht, who plays another atheist character named Decima. There's a closer shot of her elsewhere in the trailer, and her clothes seem to match up. We'll talk more about both these characters later, but for now, they provide evidence that this vehicle, and therefore the Tarantula, belong to the Atheists. And by the way, this might be Marcus. I'm assuming he'll bump into the Atheist at some point, so it wouldn't be out of the question. So it seems like the Tarantula carried these vehicles and the other things necessary for the Atheists to form a colony. However, it really doesn't look like the same ship that arrived in the Season 1 finale, so maybe it's a second ship carrying more supplies and equipment. The very next shot is Mother, Father, Sue, or Mary, and their children walking onto a ship as Mother welcomes them to their new home.
Our new home awaits.
The way this is cut right after the shot of the Tarantula implies that's where they are, but that could just be an editing trick. Either way, we can assume it's an atheist locale. From the official synopsis, we know that Mother and Father will be joining the new atheist colony this season. Worth noting, Paul is not among the children here, so it seems that after he ran off, he didn't come back. Though Hunter did chase after him, and we never saw the resolution of that chase. So I suspect that Hunter may secretly work with Paul at some point to undermine Mother. Paul has heard the voice of Soul and is further entrenched in his beliefs, and Hunter has always been one of the more devout and strict of the group. So I think an alliance between them is a natural fit. Perhaps Hunter did find Paul, but let him escape and covered up for his Mithraic friend. Sue tells Mother,
"There is a signal. Maybe this is paradise."
And after a season of struggling to find a good, non-cannibalistic food source, Campion chows down on what looks like some Kepler 22b fruit. So on the surface at least, it seems the tropical zone is the paradise that was promised. However, it is hard to ignore the biblical comparisons. Adam and Eve in a supposed paradise with an evil snake, and now, fruit. All I'll say is, I really hope Mother and Father learn their lesson and check the fruit for radiation first. We see Tempest is still pregnant, so that tells us that the time jump between seasons is not going to be too long. Mother tells Campion that she's going to see that he reaches his full potential. We know there's something special about Campion, but it's largely still a mystery. For example, why did he survive the radiation that killed his siblings? Why did Ghost Tally tell Campion to kill himself? Mother's reference to his potential tells me that whether or not she fully understands his nature, she intends to foster it, and I'm very curious to see what other special things we see from him. Then we return to Marcus. After he stopped hearing the voice and felt betrayed by Soul, I wondered where we'd find him spiritually this season. From his voiceover, it sounds like he's still very much a Mithraic believer.
We are the last Mithraic, and we are gonna bring purity to this planet.
Here we see him walking into a cave with water in the background. I don't recall seeing much water in Season 1, but we do see Campion by water later in the trailer, so I suspect Marcus isn't far from Mother and Campion, but he probably has to stay hidden, since at this point he is not a friend of the Mithraic or Atheists, so perhaps he's found a nearby cave to hold up in. Hard to tell much about this body he's dragging. The rags initially had me thinking of one of the humanoid creatures that Mother killed, but the helmet has me thinking otherwise. I also tried playing with the exposure to see if it revealed any details. This kind of looks like the Mithraic symbol for the sun, but honestly could just be scratches or debris on the helmet. And this could just be an atheist that Marcus killed, perhaps one we met in Season 1's finale. Then we get to see the atheists. We can recognize their armor from the flashback to Caleb and Mary, who stole Marcus and Sue's identities. This looks like the actor Peter Christopherson, who is playing the new character Cleaver, a devoted atheist soldier, veteran of the war on Earth, whose only friend is the supercomputer he has been sworn to protect. Whether or not this is Cleaver, I am very intrigued by this supercomputer. Father says to Mother,
"There's justice here, even for us."
And the way Mother and the children look at him, it's hard not to be skeptical of his words. We know the atheists are militaristic and hardened enough to use child soldiers. So Father's words come off as naive, and I imagine the justice they find will be harsh. He also emphasizes, even for us. Remember that necromancers were used by the Mithraic on Earth, and it's unclear how many people are privy to the fact that Campion hijacked one for the atheists. So I've got to think Mother and Father will be met with a lot of skepticism. Father seems optimistic as usual, but Mother seems appropriately weary. And then we get to see some justice. I believe this is the actor I mentioned earlier, James Harkness, who plays Tamerlane, described as an atheist army grunt soldier with a defined personality. His early life was a horror, until he found his calling with the atheist army, fighting the Mithraic on Earth. But now that he's a member of the burgeoning atheist colony on Kepler 22b, he is expected to forget the hate he feels towards his enemy, and accept a number of Mithraic as neighbors, an expectation which he violently rebels against. Maybe the punishment he takes here is in response to his violent rebellion, which would imply that this person, or thing, is what the atheists use to dish out punishment. And I gotta say, it looks very cool and creepy. It reminds me of the creepy Mother we saw earlier in Season 1, before she began taking on more human characteristics. We see someone painting what looks like a stone with an image of the snake. It seems like something you'd see as part of an arts and crafts activity, so this may be a child painting here, and Mother is checking in to see what they're painting. If a kid is painting the snake, that implies it isn't exactly a secret, and people are seeing it around the tropical zone. This lines up with Mother and the harpoon. It also lines up with this quote from the synopsis. Mother's natural child threatens to drive what little remains of the human race to extinction. Then we finally get back to the Mithraic we saw standing behind Father. Marcus tells them,
I can see that you are suffering. Let me set you free.
It seems he's trying to recruit them back as followers. It also seems they're surprised to see he survived, the way Lucius walks up to him, and the look on this guy's face. Most notable, however, is that none of them are wearing the Mithraic garb we're used to seeing them in. Further, they're armed with the devices that atheists use to augment their abilities, which we saw in flashbacks to Marcus, really Caleb, as a child. So are they working with the atheists? From the character description I read for Tamerlane earlier, that would make sense. Remember, it said that he's expected to forget the hate he feels towards his enemy, and accept a number of Mithraic as neighbors. When the Mithraic landed, their ark crashed, destroying much of their resources and people. However, the Atheists seem to be faring much better and should outpower the Mithraic, with their resources and technology intact. So the few Mithraic that remain may be forced to work with the Atheists, which would explain why they're with Father here. And that's why I said to pay attention to the straps earlier. These are likely there to attach the power packs. The trailer goes into some very quick shots at this point, where it's hard to discern exactly what's going on, so I won't comment on everything, but will point out a few noteworthy things. It's hard to tell from the shot, but I think this is actress Kim Engelbrecht, who plays the new character Decima. Highly educated, Decima was a prominent scientist and weapons developer on Earth who did a lot of immoral things in order to achieve success and domination in her field. She is notoriously ruthless, but still carries guilt, though she's erased much of her guilty feelings with futuristic therapies she personally helped develop. So as Mother becomes more and more human, it looks like we'll at least see one human becoming more and more android. Also, the reference to futuristic therapies sounds very Black Mirror to me, and I like the idea of the writers using this show to explore even more sci-fi ideas. Then we see something really interesting. Father pours white blood onto the skeleton of an android. The mesh layer that contains the body definitely brings Mother's internals to mind and makes me think we're looking at a necromancer. However, I don't think Father would know how to build a necromancer from scratch. If the Atheists had access to that knowledge, Campion wouldn't have had to hack an existing one. So perhaps Father is resurrecting or rebuilding an existing necromancer. We know that Selena Jones will be playing a character named Grandmother, a godlike android built thousands of years ago by members of the lost civilization that existed on Kepler 22b. My theory is that Father is resurrecting Grandmother. Perhaps her remains are found on the planet and Father brings her back to life, which is what we're seeing here, and I believe these shots lead to this one we see later in the trailer. Maybe this is a now intact Grandmother that just needs to be activated. We see Mother grabbing her harpoon weapon. This is clearly in the tropical zone, so I assume it's in the Atheist settlement, and I imagine this is one of their weapons. Here, Sue wears a protective suit, probably to protect against this gas. Later, we see Mother engulfed in a similar gas, so I'm thinking the two of them are actually together, or at least end up in the same location at different times. Maybe they're sneaking onto the Atheist Ark before Mother's group and the Atheists learn to trust each other and work together. I think Mother and Sue are both knocked out by the gas so they can be interrogated. In later shots, we see Sue in a room, not looking happy to be there, as though she's being held prisoner, and this shot of Mother restrained. We'll come back to the interrogation idea in a bit. We see this awesome chainsaw guy, which looks like something out of Mad Max. Based on what we know of the Atheist culture, this feels like something they would love, and we see people cheering it on. I'm thinking it's a new weaponized exoskeleton or android they built, and we're seeing a test run here. That's why it seems to be attacking garbage and debris. So people cheer while they see what it's capable of. And we catch another quick glimpse of it later. More Marcus looking crazy and calling himself invincible, though he may not be entirely wrong. Later in the trailer, we see someone trying to shock him, possibly Father using the weapon we saw him carrying. But it doesn't seem to affect Marcus. Perhaps the dark photon energy, or whatever else was in the eye he ate, augmented his powers, in a similar way that siphoning Mother's blood made Otho more powerful in Season 1. A few shots later, we see Campion staring out at the water and something splashing. Pure speculation, but maybe the bubbling is a result of something about to come out of the water. Maybe Mother's flying snake. And I have a feeling that an interaction between Campion and the Serpent won't just be a simple brawl. Technically, they're siblings. Maybe there will be some kind of communication between them in the same way Campion has spoken to the planet's ghosts. There's a quick shot of Mother pulling something out of the frame. Can't tell you what it is, but hey, here's a frame by frame. And this made me very happy. Carl Nell is back, the actor who played Carl, the awesome medical android last season. Based on the similar voice and design, I'm betting he plays a similar role, as in he's meant to help people. Though the way he says,
"What a productive day this is proving to be,"
sounds so nefarious, and it looks to me like he's talking to Sue. So I think this is part of the interrogation sequence I mentioned earlier. Perhaps the atheists are having him take a look and suss out whether or not they can trust Sue. If he does have a medical background, he'd be able to confirm that she had surgery to change her appearance, and may be able to identify her as Mary, an atheist. And this shot may also be part of the interrogation sequence. We finally get a quick glimpse of Paul, though we can't really tell where he is or what he's up to. Then there's this shot of Mother with her head restrained that I mentioned before, though one detail I didn't mention is that she's covered in dirt, just like at the start of the trailer, which I assume is after her and Father's ship crashed. When she's engulfed by the gas, she still has the dirt on her face. So maybe shortly after crashing, she woke up, found the atheist ship, and they hit her with some gas to knock her out. Then she woke up restrained by them, like we see here. And eventually, they learn to trust each other and Mother joins them. This shot looks like Father and perhaps Hunter watching the approach of a ship. You may recall that in Season 1, the two started to bond a bit, though it's hard to say what ship they'd be watching here, perhaps the Tarantula. And we cap it all off with another line from Mother.
Perhaps we're becoming too human.
Again, nothing really new here. We know Mother's struggle with her humanity is a continuing theme of the show. It seems to me the overarching plot hinted at in this trailer is a tenuous alliance between the atheists and remaining Mithraic. However, Marcus, now a religious zealot, is not on board with this, and will attempt to recruit people as followers. Meanwhile, Mother has to protect her children from the giant serpent, and Paul is on some adventure of his own. Of course, this is all just scratching the surface, and when the next trailer drops, hopefully we'll get a better idea of the details. I think we can wrap it up there. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more Raised by Wolves. With that, thank you for watching, and see you on the next One Take.